Welcome to the deep dive. This time we're really digging into New York City, looking at how it's always changing.
Yeah, we've got this amazing collection of articles spanning, what, over 100 years?
Exactly. They capture these, fleeting moments, but also the big long-term shifts. Gives you a real feel for the city's soul. Sometimes vibrant, sometimes, well, turbulent.
It's quite the mix. We've got stuff from the early 1900s right up to recent years. Infrastructure, like the subway, but also really personal stories.
Totally, like musicians in the subway, businesses closing down, but also the big landmarks going up, cultural changes, politics, that New York spirit.
It gives you this kind of multi-layered picture, doesn't it?
It really does. So our mission here, let's say, is to pull out what really shapes New York, that
Yeah.
constant cycle of change and reinvention and what it's like for the people living there.
We're looking for those aha
Hmm.
moments, right? The things that tell you something fundamental about this, well, incredibly dynamic place.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, let's kick off with this idea of the city just always being in motion, always in flux.
Yeah, what jumps out straight away is this feeling that change is the constant. One source mentions, the city's full of cliches, but it keeps feeling fresh because it's always metamorphosing.
It's always changing.
Right, like the people on a park bench today aren't the same ones who'll be there next year or even next week sometimes. It's constantly remade.
It's so true. And you think about landmarks like the New York Public Library, right? The lions out front. Feels like they've been there forever.
A permanent fixture.
But here's the thing. That exact spot used to be a reservoir. And the park behind it, Bryant Park.
Yeah.
Battle site in 1776. Then a potter's field, like a burial ground for the unknown just 50 years later. Wild, isn't it?
Wow, I didn't know that. A potter's field right there.
And the source mentions the author remembers it from when they were young. It was known for drug deals and massive rats. Now it's this manicured park with coffee kiosks.
That's incredible. So the layers of history are literally right under your feet.
Exactly. That's the insight, isn't it? It's not just that the landscape changes, but each era leaves its mark. It speaks to the sheer density of the city's experience.
And it makes you realize what we see now, what we take for granted, often hides these huge transformations that shaped what's here today. It happens everywhere, sure,
Yeah.
but maybe it's just amplified in New York.
Yeah, the concentration of people, the long history.
Definitely.
And it's not just the physical city, right? It's the people, too, constantly reinventing themselves.
Oh, yeah.
We've got this great little story about a widower, followed his fourth wife from England via Australia, ends up in the U.S.
Wow, quite a journey.
And he ends up selling a vegetable peeler on the street, something he found at state fairs. And the article says he just loved the street life.
That adaptability, right? That drive. It seems so. New York.
It really does. Does the city make the people like that, or do the people make the city constantly change?
Good question. Probably a bit of both, I'd guess. A constant back and forth.
Okay, so let's shift from the ground itself to how people get around. Transit, commuting. The subway has to be a huge part of this.
Oh, absolutely. The subway opening in 1904, that was a genuine game changer. Mayor McClellan ran the first train himself.
I read that, and like 150,000 people rode it the first day.
Astonishing, yeah. Before that, the city was crammed into lower Manhattan mostly. People lived in these crowded tenements near work. Couldn't really live far away.
Right, had to be walking distance.
The subway just blew that open, allowed the city to spread out, relieved that insane density, opened up the other boroughs. It was massive. Kind of like how the railways opened up the West, maybe.
That's a great analogy. It really did unlock the outer boroughs.
Yeah.
And thinking about paying, they introduced tokens in 53.
Yeah, the transit authority took over.
And the fare was just 15 cents. Puts things in perspective, doesn't it? The
Mm.
cost of living, the scale of it all now.
It really does. A different world.
But it's not just the big picture history. We also get these really personal moments on transit, like the musician on the 14th Street platform. Ah, that story. Yeah.
He's feeling totally beaten down, and this woman, the angel in the brown coat, just appears and listens. That simple act, it rescued him.
It's amazing how those public spaces can host these incredibly private, meaningful moments, that shared city experience, even when you're surrounded by strangers.
Yeah, the vulnerability, the resilience. He even played Maybelline over and over for her.
Chuck Berry, right?
Yeah. Made what, $61.39 for like 9 hours?
I'm not a fortune, but he said it was better than minimum wage back then.
So the subway could be transformative, but then you have the buses.
Ah, yes, the buses. Not always quite so glamorous.
Our sources mention the speeds in Manhattan being incredibly slow, like 4 miles an hour at one point. barely faster than walking.
Seriously, they even had the Pokey Award for the slowest bus. The M23 got it in 2003. Planners were just hoping for like a 10% speed increase.
Just 10%. And the anecdotes are priceless. A bus driver pulling over near the Lincoln Tunnel.
To wait for someone to finish a phone call, a non-emergency call, and the passenger was just like, what's the big deal? That New Yorker attitude, maybe? A mix of frustration and just acceptance.
Yeah, resigned understanding, perhaps. These things just happen here.
Then there's the Roosevelt Island tramway incident in 2006. That sounds genuinely terrifying.
Power failure, right. People stranded high above the East River.
For over 6 hours. About 70 people, they had to rescue them out the side door into this wire gondola thing.
Wow. Imagine that.
Yeah, 22 people from one car, including kids, an elderly woman with a walker. It really shows how vulnerable our infrastructure can be sometimes.
And how much we rely on it. And the kind of resourcefulness needed when things go wrong.
Definitely. And finally, on moving around the city, this piece of advice for subway safety from Paul Theroux's friend.
Oh, I remember this one. Go on.
You have to look as if you're the one with the meat cleaver.
Well, it's vivid, I'll give it that. Speaks volumes about the psychology of navigating a dense city, doesn't it? Projecting a certain toughness.
Or at least the appearance of it. Okay, let's move from the daily grind to some famous faces and their connections to the city. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, for instance.
Yeah, her connection was really deep, wasn't it? She came back here after both tragedies.
After President Kennedy and after Onassis, New York offered her a kind of refuge, maybe. Privacy she couldn't get elsewhere.
Seems like it. And she became known as this fighter for her glittering, frustrating city. It shows the city as a place for reinvention, even for someone on the world stage.
Then a completely different figure, Robert Moses. Monumental impact.
Undeniably. His projects in New York basically set the template for urban development across the U.S. for a while, even though he apparently wasn't big on theories.
His vision was highways, towers.
Right. Making New York, as one source put it, the nation's first city for the automobile age. More highway miles than L.A., apparently.
That's incredible given New York's image with mass transit. It just shows how competing ideas shape a city.
Absolutely. And his focus was really on cars over almost everything else. Those highways cut through neighborhoods.
Yeah, the source mentions later planners really pushed back against that vision, which makes sense. Ideas about cities evolve.
Exactly. What looks like progress in one era can seem very different later on.
Okay, switching gears again. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There's a sweet story about him going back to his old school.
St. Jude's in Manhattan, right, after the Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah. Imagine this 7'2" giant walking in, getting cheered by the kids. He even bent down to kiss his old 8th grade teacher, Sister Hannah.
That's lovely. Shows those community roots run deep, even for huge stars.
It really does. And speaking of roots, Manny Ramirez. People in Washington Heights seeing him doing road work at 5 a.m.
Up those steep hills, Dominican immigrants seeing this future baseball star putting in the work.
It shows how sports can connect people, right? Across different backgrounds, in one neighborhood, a shared passion.
Definitely. A common ground.
Okay, let's dive into culture and entertainment. So much of New York's identity is wrapped up in this. Starting with Seinfeld.
The Seinfeld paradox. Captures Manhattan life so well.
But filmed entirely in L.A.
Right. And the characters have that total New Yorker attitude that anyone living elsewhere is basically kidding themselves.
It's that worldview.
But it shows how the idea of New York resonates culturally. Even if it's a bit heightened, it taps into something universal about city life.
Yeah, maybe the shared chaos, the unique social interactions.
Could be. Then there's Woody Allen, his films, and the city.
A long relationship there. Even when his characters are having crises, the city itself feels exciting, full of possibility.
Yeah, there's that quote. After a hospital visit, thinking you could never just vanish in New York. Too much life.
The city just won't let you disappear. Now, Broadway, its evolution is fascinating.
It is, like the theaters moving north.
Yeah.
People were actually worried back in 1916 if audiences would go all the way up to 48th Street.
Seems funny now, doesn't it? But it shows the city expanding, people adapting.
And the impact of those long-running shows. South Pacific opening was seen as a sign New Yorkers had nothing more to worry about.
Can you imagine? And a chorus line closing after 15 years.
Record run.
But the last performance was just like any other, that dedication.
The show must go on, right? That performing arts spirit.
Then West Side Story. The source calls it moving, capturing the ugliness, but also the pathetic, tender, and forgiving side of the city through gang warfare.
That balcony scene with Larry Kurt and Carol Lawrence was apparently very affecting. art reflecting social reality, even the tough stuff.
Holding up a mirror but finding the humanity. And Eugene O'Neill returning after years away.
Back from California after 12 years. Setting The Iceman Cometh in the Lower West Side of 1912. Must have been a big deal.
Shows New York's enduring pull for artists, right? As a setting, as inspiration.
Definitely a cultural hub. And opera. Earlier days, the enthusiasm was huge.
Nilsson, Stelchi, Campanini's getting these massive receptions, flowers, laurel wreaths, treated like rock stars.
Shows the cultural priorities back then, how revered these art forms were.
There's even a little anecdote about a non-singing extra in Aida at the Met.
Just waiting backstage for his cue.
His 7th performance that season. A tiny glimpse of all the work behind the scenes.
All the moving parts in those huge productions.
Fast forward to Alice Tully Hall reopening after renovation, better acoustics, and they chose 15th century Sephardic romances for the first concert.
Inspire, the source called it, shows that commitment to diverse traditions, investing in culture.
And Leonard Bernstein, musicians apparently had mixed feelings about his theatrical conducting.
A bit showy, perhaps.
But ultimately, they respected his deep knowledge, his professionalism. He knew the music inside out.
Like when he re-recorded Mahler's Second and heard things others missed, expertise earns respect.
Then Lang Lang playing that Red Steinway.
One of only 2 in the world, auctioned for China earthquake relief.
Yeah. And the source mentions his playing evolving too, from just technical brilliance to something more disciplined, art, philanthropy, personal growth.
All intersecting there. And jazz, the village vanguard.
Coltrane chose to record there in '61 for a reason.
It had this reputation, right, for sparking the best performances. Those recordings are legendary now.
Shows how certain venues become crucial, almost sacred ground for musical history.
Absolutely. They foster something special.
Okay, let's get into the neighborhoods. The sheer diversity, the identities tied to them. Starting with teenagers arguing about Brooklyn hip-hop.
Yeah, debating who deserves the most props. Biggie, Jay-Z, Fabulous, Mos Def.
They know their stuff. It shows Brooklyn's huge impact on music and the pride people take in their local stars. As one kid says, we got a lot of stars coming out of Brooklyn.
That deep connection between place and cultural identity.
Then you get these clashing views of the same place, like the Crowbar nightclub seeing its area as just commercial mixed use.
Ignoring the residents, the public housing you're buying. Over 1,000 apartments.
Yeah, and the cabbie saying, nobody lives around here. Whose view wins out? How do these different worlds coexist?
Raises big questions about shared space and perception.
Going back to the Lower East Side in 1980, you see those ethnic tensions during change.
Edna Leib worried low-income housing would kill the Jewish community.
While Juan Otero argued it was essential for the Spanish-speaking community to survive. Competing needs, competing anxieties.
The real complexities of managing change in diverse areas.
And Soho, the classic transformation story.
From artist haven to, well, pricey boutiques and galleries.
Yeah, the artist lamenting it's not just for artists anymore, the cynical promotion of art. The price difference for a Liechtenstein poster then versus now.
That tension between authenticity and commercial pressure happens everywhere. But Soho's a prime example.
And the prices. Tribeca in 2007 costing more on average than the Upper East Side.
That's a massive shift.
Yeah.
Shows that rapid gentrification downtown and what it does to affordability.
The meatpacking district, too. Vincent Incanilios moving there in '69 when it was a no man's land.
And now, trendy, expensive. He couldn't believe it.
It's hard to even imagine the transformation, the sheer scale of it.
How places get completely reimagined.
And people fight to keep things the same, too. Greenwich Village preservation battles, protesting new buildings like Schnabel's, pushing for landmark districts.
That deep desire to protect neighborhood character against the tide of development. That constant push-pull.
Then there's the term Huabu for Chinatown.
Meaning it's more than just a place, right? It's about being Chinese culturally, regardless of geography or passport.
Exactly. A powerful sense of identity maintained within the city.
Culture and language creating belonging.
East Harlem showing demographic shifts, too. Fewer Puerto Ricans, more Mexican businesses on 116th. The city's ethnic makeup always evolving.
That constant flow of immigration, migration, reshaping neighborhoods.
And Brooklyn again. Gentrification is so complete now, you have to actively remember what it was like before.
Evelyn Ortner's vision in the 60s, seeing today's Brooklyn when it was considered, run down, almost hallucinatory.
And Mr. Rollman restoring buildings in Brooklyn Heights, then missing it terribly after moving away. That personal, bittersweet side of change.
Yeah, how it impacts individuals, collective memory, profound stuff.
Okay, let's step into the green spaces. Parks, public areas so vital in a dense city. Central Park, obviously.
The big one, designed back in 1858, Olmsted and Vaux, won $2,000 for the plan.
Intended as a garden for all, a private Eden, its 150th anniversary in 2003 was huge. Shows how important it remains.
A truly vital oasis.
Then Washington Square Park in 1962. What a scene.
Eclectic is the word. Hipsters and squares coexisting. Singing, guitars.
A lasso-twirling cowboy named Texas Weinstein, a monkey watching a poet. Just wonderfully chaotic.
Only thing banned was bongos, apparently. A real slice of city life then.
But even parks face battles. Washington Square redesign in 2008.
Protests led by Catherine Swan, imagining iron fences, fighting the changes.
Yeah, flyers saying stop Mayor Bloomberg from destroying Washington Square Park. People get passionate about defending these shared spaces.
Understandably, they feel deeply connected.
Up north, Fort Tryon Park and the Cloisters, a different vibe.
Barnard and Rockefeller Jr.'s vision, right? A medieval art museum and park on those bluffs over the Hudson.
Olmsted Jr. did the landscape, opened in '38. A unique blend of nature and culture.
Really special place.
And Brooklyn had park ambitions too, Prospect Park in the 1860s.
Designed to rival, maybe even surpass, Central Park. A bit of borough rivalry.
Seems like it. Civic pride, ambition, trying to counter Manhattan's dominance.
Interesting dynamic.
Then Van Cortlandt Park. Fanny, more natural, less designed.
Yeah, the source says it's more like what New York was before development.
Right.
What occurs naturally here is what Olmsted and Vaux went to great pains to create elsewhere.
A glimpse of the original landscape.
Provides a neat contrast.
And finally, the Cantor Roof Garden at the Met. Amazing views.
But maybe not the best place for sculpture. Inhospitable site, this source says.
Yet they do it. Seasonal shows using that dramatic backdrop, even for big, challenging stuff like Jeff Koons.
Shows creativity in using urban spaces, even unconventional ones, for art.
All right, shifting tone a bit. Let's touch on some controversies, conflicts. New York's certainly had its share. The Sensation exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum.
Oh yeah, that was explosive. Aggressive marketing, the outrage over the Virgin Mary piece.
Giuliani threatening to cut their funding. The museum won in court, but then the Saatchi influence came out, kind of tarnished it.
A Pyrrhic victory? Maybe. Highlights that tension. Artistic freedom, public taste, political pressure.
Yeah.
Always tricky.
Then the critical mass bike rides. They used to be pretty common.
But the mood changed after August 2004, around the Republican National Convention.
Yeah. More police arrests. Cyclists felt the relationship became antagonistic, less fun, more confrontational or obligatory.
Shows how bigger events, politics can seep into everyday community things.
And Stonewall, of course, we have to mention it, a pivotal moment.
Absolutely. Huge for LGBTQ plus rights, not just in the city, but everywhere. Our sources don't detail it, but its significance is massive.
And the sources do mention tensions after Biggie Smalls' funeral procession, police clashes, complaints of excessive force.
Contrasting with the regal proceedings for Biggie himself, shows those complex, sometimes fraught, police-community dynamics.
Okay, let's turn to business, the economy, the engine of the city, Wall Street reactions to market crashes. Interesting comparison.
1929 versus 2008, right. Panic then, more subdued concern later.
Yeah, 2008 saw everyday bedlam continue, lots of talk on the street even after huge drops.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more resilience or a learned experience?
Or better regulations, maybe. A different system than in 29. Plus, a faster government response in 08.
Good point. But the underlying hum of activity seemed to persist. We also have Phyllis Peterson's story.
First woman on the NYC floor.
Started as a trainee making $65 a week in '54, ended up a partner at a firm. An amazing journey, breaking barriers. Her first commission in '58 really opened her eyes.
Incredible perseverance, a real milestone.
And real estate, always changing hands. The Helmsley building sale is seen as just typical New York evolution.
Nothing stays the same for long, even iconic buildings, subject to market forces.
Speaking of Helmsley, Leona's will. $12 million to her dog. Trouble.
Made headlines everywhere. But potentially billions more for other dogs through a trust. That's eccentric, even for New York.
Definitely memorable. And there was that fight over the Empire State Building, too.
Malkin versus Schneider, with Mrs. Helmsley involved, high stakes, complex deals.
Alvin Lane's comment about millions and millions of dollars almost sounds like an understatement.
Gives you a sense of the scale of these things.
But not all developers are aiming for the luxury market. Samuel J. Lafrac.
His motto, "We serve the mass, not the class." built lots of sturdy, more affordable brick housing across the boroughs.
A different approach, focusing on housing for a wider range of people. Important counterpoint.
Definitely. And New York's labor history is so important and often overlooked now.
Yeah, near places like Union Square Cafe, CBGB's, sites of epic labor battles, a reminder of this struggle.
Crucial history. Shaped laws and conditions everywhere.
The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, just horrific.
146 lives lost, mostly young immigrant women. Exposed those terrible, dangerous conditions.
And the contrast with today, fireproof factories, union health centers, better wages and hours, shows the impact, the legacy of that tragedy.
A grim reminder of why those fights for safety and rights were and are so vital.
Then there's Harry Goldberg, the 47th Street diamond dealer.
A big name, but stayed right there on that block. President of the Diamond Dealers Club.
Yeah, and that whole handshake-based Yiddish mazel and brucha business culture, a unique little world within the city.
Shows how tradition and personal ties still matter in some sectors, even now.
Foreign ownership is a growing factor, too. Bertelsmann's merger in publishing
Increased their market share significantly. Surprised New York execs raised cost-cutting concerns.
Yeah, half the top 20 U.S. publishers now foreign-owned. A big shift.
Reflects that globalized economy.
And boosting tourism, the I Love New York campaign.
Huge budget, big media blitz for the state, but separate ads planned just for the city starting in the fall with the song.
Shows the city's unique brand power, even separate from the state. Tourism is huge business.
Absolutely. Strategic promotion.
And retail icons, Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Macy's focused on lower prices early on.
Contrasting with Bloomie's becoming this modern icon under Marvin Traub.
Yeah.
Playing New York, New York in stores.
Yeah, and Jodie Sweetbaum calling it the place for real fashion captures its cultural cachet.
Different strategies, different roles in the city's life.
But it's tough for small businesses. M&E Madison Hardware.
Oh, the hardware store facing that huge rent hike, forced to close after years.
So sad. Loyal customers, neighborhood fixture, Eric Schwartz worrying about other small stores, his dad's anger. It's a common, painful story.
That constant struggle.
Yeah.
Balancing development with keeping local character, keeping small shops alive. Tough balance.
And finally, Essie Nail Polish.
Based in Astoria, Queens. Those iconic color names, Mademoiselle, ballet slippers. Global phenomenon.
Shows New York's power as a launchpad for creative businesses, big and small.
Entrepreneurial spirit in action.
Okay, politics and governance. Never boring in NYC. Early history first.
British appointees giving way to elected mayors, Clintons, Livingstons, Schuyler's, and Tammany Hall rising, advocating for the middle class.
Shows that evolution from colonial rule to, well, something more democratic, if complicated.
Development of institutions, shifting power.
Even small things get attention. The Marriage License Bureau moving.
Speculation that fancier offices might mean higher fees for ceremonies, even though it was only $25.
It's funny how those little things can spark concern about costs. Hits people personally.
Touches everyday life.
And the Miss Universe calling 311 anecdote.
Sounding less querulous than other callers.
A lighthearted glimpse into the sheer range of calls city services handle daily.
Managing a city this diverse is complex.
And more recently, the Mayor Bloomberg third-term debate.
Voter-approved term limits were in place, but he worked to get the council to change the rules.
Sparked a big citywide debate, right? About democracy, the will of the people, checks and balances.
Highlights those ongoing tensions between rules and political ambition.
All right, we have to acknowledge the tougher side, too. Disasters, loss, fresh kills landfill.
On Staten Island, operated from '48 to 2001, really coincided with that age of disposability.
Became a symbol of it. But the late 80s, early 90s saw that shift towards recycling, reuse, a changing awareness, even as it kept operating.
A huge chapter in the city's relationship with waste and environmental thinking.
The disappearance of Eight and Pat's in '79 still haunts the city.
The detective retracing his route daily, months later, searching for clues in Soho. Heartbreaking. Shows the dedication, but also the profound sadness of unsolved cases.
Lingers for the community.
And the public fascination with Hedda Nussbaum's story in the late 80s.
It was her ordinariness that drew people in, a reminder that stable lives can fall apart.
Yeah, but the source points out the contrast. Huge media attention for her, but often less for family violence in poorer areas. Raises uncomfortable questions about bias.
Whose stories get told, whose don't.
Then the 1935 Harlem riot, sparked by a shoplifter's arrest, rumors of a beating.
Police response, Mayor LaGuardia blaming irresponsible individuals, a common official narrative during unrest.
Highlights those long histories of tension, conflict, and the different ways they're interpreted.
The Sean Bell shooting trial aftermath in 2006 was also incredibly fraught.
The irony of the acquitted detectives standing in front of that greatest detectives in the world logo, while facing intense public anger.
Stark image. Underscores the complexities of accountability, public trust, especially in sensitive police cases.
Huge challenges there.
And challenges for officers in high-crime areas, too. Officer Lopez relying on phone calls.
Because residents feared retaliation if seen talking to police.
Yeah, shows the climate of fear, the barriers to building trust, doing effective community policing.
Really tough dynamics.
The 1978 Lufthansa heist at JFK, still famous.
Legendary. $3 million in cash, $2 million in jewels, 7 masked men. Classic New York crime story. Captured the imagination.
And then 911. Impossible to talk about New York without it.
The devastation, the loss of life, especially among firefighters, but also those incredible acts of heroism from ordinary people, building supers.
Unimaginable loss, but also resilience. The loss of elite FDNY units, leaders, a huge blow.
A defining moment. Showed the city's vulnerability, but also its capacity for unity, compassion.
And the long-term health problems for Ground Zero workers, still an issue.
Yeah, the federal report, years later, finding inadequate health programs, uncertain costs, long-lasting consequences, and the need for ongoing support. A responsibility that continues.
The character of New York firefighters is often remarked upon, that mix.
Big city edge and small town sensibility. Mirrors the city itself, brash, funny, loud, but also sentimental, opinionated.
Thoughtful, too, a unique blend. Admirable spirit.
Looking back further, that 1960 mid-air collision over Brooklyn and Staten Island.
Horrific, 137 people died, a stark warning about growing air traffic dangers over cities.
Tragic reminder of the risks in expanding air travel.
But ending this section on a note of survival, the miracle on the Hudson.
U.S. Airways Flight 1549. The accounts from the ferry captains who helped rescue people.
Captain Catanzaro, Captain Lucas, emphasizing Captain Sullenberger's incredible calm, his thoroughness, ensuring everyone was safe.
Truly inspiring. Skill, courage, amazing teamwork in a crisis.
Okay, let's lighten things up a bit. Food and drink, always a hot topic in New York, starting with Junior's cheesecake. A debate about its origins.
Seems so. Walter Rosen's version of working with a baker versus Mr. Horowitz's story of a licensing deal. Even famous recipes have contested histories.
The truth is probably somewhere in between, right? Part of the legend now.
And Papaya King had plans for a global empire.
Opening a prototype store, aiming big with hot dogs and tropical drinks. That entrepreneurial drive again.
Taking a local favorite and thinking world domination.
Then Katz's pastrami, more than just a sandwich, it's
a cultural touchstone. The passionate debates about deli, the sheer amount of pastrami piled high, its appeal across the board, iconic.
Enduring power of tradition and quality there.
And the Soup Man, inspired by Seinfeld's Soup Nazi.
Became a tourist attraction. Strict rules, takeout only, daily menu, shows how pop culture can create these real-world legends.
Fascinating crossover.
But change affects food spots, too. Spring Street losing places like Lombardi's.
Rising rents, forcing out long-standing businesses. The end of that lively substitute for Naples feel.
Familiar story. Small businesses squeezed by rising costs, changing neighborhoods.
Always a challenge.
And fortune cookies. Turns out they're not Chinese.
Japanese originally? Look and taste different there, too. The fortunes pinched into the fold, not stuffed inside.
Who knew? Culinary paths get twisted.
Green markets have been a huge success story, though.
Barry Benepe's initial struggle to get farmers to sell direct in Union Square, they were reluctant.
But it took off. Now it's self-sustaining, connecting city dwellers with local food. Hugely important. Growing awareness of local food systems.
The celebrity chef phenomenon, too. A shift from classic French places like Lutèce
to chefs showcasing personal styles, like at Time Warner Center. More about the individual chef's vision now. Reflects that broader trend towards personalized culinary experiences.
Lutèce in '61 sounded incredibly elegant and expensive.
Candlelight, linen, original art, peak formal luxury dining.
Evokes a certain era.
And the Four Seasons menu back then, elaborate, cold apps like herbed lobster parfait, flaming dishes like stroganoff made tableside.
Grand theatrical dining. As much about the show as the food. Sylvia's in Harlem, the soul food institution.
Herbert Woods' crucial behind-the-scenes role, his truck-driving income helping keep it afloat early on. unexpected factors in success.
Shows it's often more than just one person's vision. Hard work, support.
And modern fine dining, Jean-Georges Crabbe Beignet amuse-bouche.
Described as a cascade of sensations, captures that artistry, the focus on intense flavors, technique, pushing culinary boundaries.
Okay, last big topic, sports. Always generates passion in NYC. Pee Wee Reese's slightly off throw, saved by Gil Hodge's amazing stretch at first.